Formula One has a big problem, and that is the fact that many talented drivers fall by the wayside and fail to even get an opportunity to race in the sport. Nyck de Vries is probably the most recent and most talented victim of this. The 2019 Formula 2 champion never got his chance to prove himself on the biggest stage, but this might be changing for next season. So is Nyck de Vries on track to be Formula One's next rookie, and will the move be a success? Let's have a look. My name's Andy, and this is Behind the Drive. Nyck de Vries was recently crowned the first ever Formula E World Champion, which is his second title over the last 3 years to add to his Formula 2 championship. He's had limited experience in Formula 1 though, and now that he's proven his ability on multiple occasions, he's being rumoured to be joining the grid for 2022. Wasted talent. Nyck de Vries first joined the Formula 2 category in 2017, after working his way up through the ranks in Formula Renault and GP3. He joined the series at a time where there were some seriously talented drivers coming through those ranks. In that 2017 season, Charles Leclerc won the title in his rookie year, with de Vries ending up 7th, with 5 podium finishes to his name, which included 1 race win at the sprint race in Monaco. So a good debut season in Formula 2, and he was certainly looking like a talented junior driver. He remained in the series for 2018, where, once again, a couple of rookies had come through the ranks and were making their full debut season in Formula 2. These were George Russell, who won that year, and Lando Norris, who came second. So there was yet more talent in Formula 2 that year once again, as those two graduated straight into Formula 1 after their rookie seasons. That year, de Vries came 4th in the championship, a step up from his previous season and just behind the top 3 drivers who all made it onto the 2019 F1 grid. He achieved 6 podium finishes, of which 3 were victories on this occasion, so he made good progress year on year. He eventually ended up just 10 points behind Alex Albon in 3rd, so there were really fine margins between the Dutchman and those all-important top 3 positions which guarantee a driver enough points to qualify for a super license. It did mean though that de Vries was in a good position going into the 2019 Formula 2 championship. He capitalised on this good position in style and won the championship at the penultimate round of the season in Sochi after consistent performances across the season, including 4 race victories. Formula 2 is a feeder series. It's becoming known as perhaps the only pathway through to Formula 1, or at least the only realistic pathway. As per the rules, the Formula 2 champion is not allowed to compete in the series again, with it being expected that the title winner will graduate into Formula 1 more often than not. But de Vries is the first F2 champion since 2013 who failed to make it onto the F1 grid. Many see this as an outcome of the number of paid drivers who are on the grid at the moment, who are there due to their bank balance instead of their talent, which is an argument that makes a good point, but it's not all that new. Given the super license structure, graduates are limited to drivers who have enough experience or have earned the right to be in Formula 1. But arguably this hasn't been enough, as drivers such as Nyck de Vries have been left by the wayside. Instead of Formula 1, de Vries moved to Formula E, and also made the switch to LMP2 endurance racing. This is not exactly bad by any means. Both FE and the World Endurance Championship are very well respected with some serious talent in their ranks. And as you might expect from a Formula 2 champion, he's done well in both of these series, but it's in Formula E in particular that he's really excelled, especially during this latest season. Racing for the Mercedes EQ team, de Vries was recruited as part of the team's official debut season. He started his Formula E campaign before his championship-winning Formula 2 season was even over, and he did okay during the 2019-20 season, ending up 11th in the most experienced group he'd ever raced in. But compared to his teammate, Stoffel Vandoorne, who came 2nd that year, it was not exactly amazing. But I think it's important to note here that Formula E is a very different series to the more traditional categories that the drivers race in. There are factors such as attack mode or fan boost, which give a tactical element that simply doesn't exist in other series. That's not to mention the fact that generally speaking, all of the tracks are street circuits, and the fact that the qualifying format is quite different to those the likes of Vandoorne or De Vries might have seen before. So drivers that come over from Formula 1 or Formula 2 tend to take some time to reach their potential in the category, and it's also worth noting that Stoffel Vandoorne achieved a 2nd place finish in his 2nd season after a tough year on his debut. So this explains why I think that De Vries has done so well in the 2020-21 Formula E season. It started off with his first ever win in the opening race in Saudi Arabia, and what followed was one of the most competitive campaigns in Formula E's short history, with a whopping 18 of the 24 drivers in title contention going into the final 2 races in Berlin. But De Vries was consistently within the top 10 in that championship across the entirety of the season, and despite not being the bookies' favourite over that last weekend of racing, he delivered the Mercedes EQ team's first Drivers' Championship and contributed to their first Teams' Championship at the final chaotic race. It means Nyck de Vries has achieved his second title over a couple of years, and his reputation has never been higher. He's always been a fan favourite in Formula E, picking up the fan boost the vast majority of the time, but the Mercedes EQ team is withdrawing from Formula E at the end of next season, before the Generation 3 cars come in. So it means De Vries will be out of a drive, should he stay in that category, and with that team. But that might not be so much of a problem for the 26-year-old if the reports are true. Nyck de Vries' golden opportunity. We've seen how Nyck de Vries is a talented driver that's missed out on his opportunity to make it to Formula 1 despite ticking all of the boxes to achieve that feat. But it has emerged that the Dutch driver might have a chance at getting into the pinnacle of motorsport with Williams. He already has the connections to the most successful Formula 1 team on the grid over the last few years, as his Mercedes links mean he's been the test and reserve driver for this season, alongside Stoffel Vandoorne. This is to be expected, given he races for the Mercedes team in Formula E, but it helps his F1 prospects too. Not only will he be completing valuable simulator work for Mercedes, but he'll also be in a position to step in and drive at any time, meaning he'll be as prepared as he can be despite not actually competing in Formula 1. If the rumours are true, then De Vries has his golden opportunity with Williams, a team that has been a backmarker for the last few years, but with new investment has seen a step forward. They have a Mercedes-backed driver in that team already, who's also a Formula 2 champion in George Russell, and the Williams team will be looking to replace him should the British driver end up going to the Mercedes team, as he's widely expected to for 2022. De Vries would be a very good option here, despite there being other candidates who have more Formula 1 racing experience. Williams have publicly announced that they no longer need pay drivers, and they're in a financial position to choose who races for that team, which is something they've not been able to do for a while. Their current team makeup comes from a Mercedes Junior and a driver that pays the team for a seat. So there's an ideal situation as they start to realise the benefit of having backing from their new owners, Dorilton Capital. They've invested in their team personnel, and so it makes sense that they would do the same for their drivers, and De Vries would represent a driver that's worked with one of the top teams in the sport most recently, and is also on top form after becoming the first ever Formula E World Champion. If Mercedes do still have an influence over that seat, which I think it's worth clarifying that Williams have said that they don't want that, I think it will be a sensible choice for the German team to put De Vries in that seat and give him his first Formula 1 opportunity. It makes sense for them, as they'll be on the lookout for a safe pair of hands to potentially take over from Lewis Hamilton if he chooses to retire in the next few years. For me, it would be a very good call for Williams as well. De Vries has a vast amount of racing experience, and those ties to Mercedes will bring valuable information and insight to the team as they progress their recovery. He's also not exactly old. At 26, he's got a mature head on his shoulders, and he's beaten far more experienced drivers on the Formula E grid this season. The team have also been building their Mercedes ties, and if they give De Vries the opportunity, then that'll only strengthen that partnership further. There are some downsides to bringing in the Dutch driver, the first of which being that he doesn't have any racing experience in Formula 1. Therefore, his development feedback might have a bit of a question mark, especially considering he's raced in Formula 2, which is a spec series, and Formula E, which is a series that's mostly a spec series. But, given he's the test and reserve driver for Mercedes, he will have been providing feedback throughout the 2021 season based on the simulator environment. Plus, he's obviously also given development feedback in terms of the car setup, for example, in the series that he's raced in. But when compared to some of the potential alternative options, this is an area of doubt. He's also up against some tough competition for that seat. With Williams declaring they no longer need to depend on pay drivers, it could result in a complete overhaul of their drivers next year. Especially if Russell moves to Mercedes, they'll obviously also then have to make a decision on whether they keep Latifi. The other candidates for those seats include experienced Formula 1 drivers such as Nico Hülkenberg, Valtteri Bottas and Daniel Kvyat. All of these have experience that De Vries doesn't, but that doesn't mean the Dutch driver should be taken out of the running, in my opinion. For me, De Vries is a driver that absolutely deserves a Formula 1 seat, and clearly he has the talent to do so. He's always been overlooked due to a lack of financial backing, but he definitely has the potential. And now he has World Championship winning experience, he's never been more prepared for a Formula 1 seat. So why not now? Williams are clearly on the lookout for a refreshed driver lineup, and on the eve of the new regulations, now is the right time to bring the Formula 2 and Formula E champion onto the Formula 1 grid. What do you think of De Vries and his chances of joining the Formula 1 grid for next year? Let me know in the comments, and thanks for watching.